Let's talk about knowing your camera and what types of results you can expect with your camera. Even if you were able to get the green screen just right with the color intensity bang on, your results may be limited by your camera itself. You see, by the time your camera starts compressing the image, it has already thrown away a good amount of information to save space. You see, to have a nice looking image, each pixel needs to have its own luma data. But many years ago, it was found that each pixel does not need to have its own chroma data. Basically, you could group pixel colors together to save space without a major loss in visual quality. This is called Chroma Subsampling, and here's how it works. The formula for writing out how an image is sampled is JAB. The first value, J, tells us how many pixels wide our sample block is, and that's usually 4. The second value, the A row, tells us how many pixels in the top row will get sampled. The B row tells us how many pixels in the second row will get sampled. If the A row is sampling at 4 pixels and the B row is sampling at 4 pixels, we have all the color represented. This chroma subsampling is used on high-end cameras like the Sony f65, Arri Alexa, and others. If the A row is getting 2 samples and the B row is getting 2 samples, you have a sampling of 4-2-2. This is the sampling used in AVC Intra 100, Digital Betacam, DVC Pro 50 and DVC Pro HD, Apple ProRes, XDCam HD 422, and Canon's MXF HD 422. Let's look at 420. In this sampling, the top row shares a chroma sample every 2 pixels, but the bottom row doesn't get any samples at all, and shares the color information of the pixels directly above them. This is used by all H.26x video coding standards, including implementations such as DVD, PAL DV and DVCam, HDV, AVC HD and AVC Intra 50, and Apple Intermediate Codec. Although some profiles of MPEG-4 Part 2 and H.264/MPEG-4 AVC allow higher quality sampling schemes such as 444, you will probably never see it in a camera. So why is this important? Well, it's relatively easy to pull a key in a sea of green pixels, but once the green meets an edge, we have problems. When the pixels are sharing samples, it will cause the image to have green pixels, or they shouldn't be, and lots of jaggy artifacts on the edges. To make things worse, what a consumer understands to be a pixel and what a pixel actually is are two different things. Let's take a look at an example. Let's pretend for a moment that this is a picture. It's actually a picture of me, which I have put through a mosaic filter. See, there I am. Ooh, I ate many a donuts back in the day. Anyway, that's me. Let's say this is a representation of a very small LCD monitor. Now, the monitor that you're looking at this tutorial on has many, many pixels, and the monitor that I'm recording this on has over 2 million pixels because the resolution is 1920 by 1080. But this little picture, this little piggy, has a resolution of 100 pixels. It's 10 pixels across and 10 pixels up and down or vertical. So, in order for your monitor to reproduce the colors of this image, what you need are this, this, and this. If you zoom way up on your computer monitor, you will see that to make each individual pixel, you will have a red, blue, and green subpixel. Perhaps not in this order, but you get the idea. Anyway, you can see here, if you're looking this close, you can't really see the colors. But if we kind of make this smaller, you can see that this does make the orange that is, in fact, in my face. It's very interesting. You see that? So that's how all modern displays work. They have a red, blue, and a green subpixel, and basically the mixing of those in the additive process gives us the 16 point whatever million colors that most modern monitors are able to display. Now, if a camera were to take a picture of this and have the exact number of pixels as in this monitor. And that's not so far off because for a long time, camera phones had a resolution of 2 megapixels. Now, they may have not been 16 by 9 sensors, but they still had roughly 2 million pixels in them. So that's not too far off. Now, you're not going to find a camera that has a 100 pixel sensor, but we're going to use the wild world of imagination here. But here's the thing. A camera that had a resolution of 100 pixels will not have a color resolution of 100 pixels. Because you see, the way an imager works is, if this is one photo sensor right here, this photo sensor is blind to colors. All it basically detects are levels of brightness or luminance. And in order to give this pixel color data, you have to put a physical filter over it. And the filter filters out wavelengths of light so that this one photo sensor, which would be mapped to a pixel on the screen, gets a color. And now you should start to see where I'm going with this, but a long time ago, a man by the name of Bryce Bayer came up with a design for a filter to go over sensors. And it worked like this. Because the human eye is much more sensitive to green wavelengths, the filter that Bayer came up with has more green than red and blue. Now, this makes sense because this is the way our eyes work. The problem is that even though this is 100 pixels of resolution, if it were just black and white, you see, because if you take the color information, you still get kind of gradations of gray. So this would reproduce a 100 pixel image in black and white. The problem is that the actual amount of color data in this filter is only 1/3. It takes 3 of these pixels to make the actual color in 1 RGB pixel, which is what your monitor has. So to get all the rest of the color information, the sensor basically has to interpolate or guess where the colors are based on where the other colors are. Now, if it were just a 100 pixel sensor, it probably would not do a very good job at this. But since most modern cameras have millions and millions of photo sensors, it can do a reasonably good job of this. You know, it's not uncommon to have DSLR cameras be upwards of 15, 20, 24, 36 megapixels. But the point here is that to start your image, you do not have all the color information that's represented in your monitor. So even though your monitor is 1080, you really only have 1/3 of that color information, and the rest is filled in by the computer in the cameras guessing about where that information should go. I only say this to say that when you have that, you're already dealing with something that is kind of guessing at where the pixels are. Then Chroma Subsampling steps in and throws 3/4 of that information right in the garbage. You see, because if we take this filter off, I mean, what do we have here? We need this kind of orange. If we go to the info, we don't need paint or brushes here. If we go to the info here, you see we get this kind of beigey color. Well, that's green. Well, how does it know that that's supposed to be beige? Well, it's going to have to guess. And if this, were a big megapixel image, it could reasonably say that that's going to be orange based on the other orange hues. But what about this one? I mean, that's a much different color. How's it going to figure that out? Well, it has to guess. And that's all fine and good because it's in most digital cameras. And if you've ever looked at, a full raw image off of a DSLR camera, it looks great. There's nothing wrong with it. The problem is that for doing visual effects work and for green screening, you don't have all the color information to start. And then Chroma Subsampling jumps in there and says, hey, I'm throwing 3/4 of this information right in the garbage. And that's if you're at 420. If you're recording it with a camera that's recording at 422, it's throwing away half of the color information. So you're basically taking a SD image and then stretching that over a full res HD image to have the color information. Now it's a heck of a lot better than 1/4 of HD being stretched over, which is 420. So just something to be aware of. It's not a huge deal. The cameras can still make great images, but That's just to say that you want to have all the color information to start with before you start compressing the image, and you'll be much better off that way. If you're using a DSLR camera or a prosumer video camera that records to H.264 or AVC HD, you will be dealing with 420. Since that is what makes up the bulk of what beginners are dealing with, this is what I'm going to show you today. This makes it especially important to have a bright, evenly lit, saturated green behind your subject. Your camera is going to throw away tons of color information, so you need to have all you can at the start. So, if we can pull a key from any color, which we can, why would we use green? The primary reason to use green is that green is given the most data in the compression pipeline. Why is this? Because the human eye is most sensitive to green. Because our eyes are most sensitive to green, there are more green photosensors on your camera's imager, and green is given more bandwidth in the data pipeline. The color we should be looking for is this, pure green at about 70% intensity. How do you know what you're getting? Well, you will have to do a lot of tests and know your camera, which we'll talk about more later. Let's talk about lighting the subject. If your goal is to composite your subject into a scene, you want to try and reproduce the lighting in that scene as best you can. Say you want to place your subject out on the street during the morning. The best thing to do is get out there and take a photo of the location with a reference subject so that you can see where the light is falling. If you're outside during the day, you will usually have a lot of fill light coming from all directions. This is what the sky does. If it's overcast, you will see that there are almost no shadows on anything. This is because the light is coming from all directions. If you're out on a day where the sun is clearly out, you will have a very strong main light, and then the sky will act as a giant fill light. But because the sun is a lot stronger, you will see a lot more shadowing. It's important to note where the sun is in relationship to where your subject is facing. If you can recreate this well, you can really sell the composite to the viewer. If you are shooting an exterior at night, take some test shots. Nighttime lighting is a lot more dramatic because you don't have all that sky providing ambient fill light. All you have is the moon and whatever practical street lights or other lights are illuminating the space. Interiors can follow the same process. Take some test footage or photos and take note of where the lights are. If you do this, you're going to be a lot better off when you start setting things up with your green screen. If you can't get out there and shoot test plates, and you have to composite to a photo or a video, you will want to look at that photo or video to see where the shadows are falling. This will give you an indication of where the light sources are in that scene. This is a lot more tricky to nail, but it's definitely doable. Now that we've covered the basics, I'm going to show you how to set up a basic portable green screen, how to light it, how to light your subject, and get you on your way to pulling some great looking keys.